The double clue. But above all, no publicity, said Mr. Marcus Hardman, probably for the 20th time. In his monologue, the word publicity rang out like a persistent leitmotif. Mr. Hardman was a small man, somewhat plump, with impeccable manicured nails and a plaintive tenor voice. In a way, he was a celebrity, and his profession was social life. He was wealthy, though not excessively so, and spent his money zealously on social pleasures. He had a hobby, collecting. He was a born collector. Old lace, antique fans, ancient jewelry. Harsh modernity seemed as if it did not exist for Marcus Hardman. Following an urgent summons, Poirot and I arrived at his home to find him pacing in a state of agonizing doubt. Under the circumstances, it was unthinkable for him to go to the police. Yet, not to go was equivalent to losing the most precious items in his collection. As a compromise, he had settled on Poirot. My rubies, Monsieur Poirot, and the emerald necklace. They say it belonged to Catherine de Medici. Oh, heavens, the emerald necklace! Perhaps you would be so kind as to explain the circumstances of their disappearance? Poirot asked gently. I am burning with impatience to do so. Yesterday I had some guests over for tea, a small, intimate gathering, so to speak, of only 6 or 7 people. During the season, I usually host 1 or 2 such meetings. Perhaps I should not say so myself, but they have always been a great success. Good music, Nakora, that famous pianist, and Catherine Bird, the contralto from Australia, as always, in a large drawing room. But before tea, I was showing my guests my collection of medieval jewelry. I keep them in that wall safe over there. Inside, it is fitted like a cabinet, with shelves lined in colored velvet. Jewels show up better against such a background. Afterward, we looked at the fans in that display case on the wall. Then we went into the studio to listen to the music. It was only after the guest had departed that I discovered the safe was empty. It had been cleared out. I must have failed to close it properly, and someone took advantage of that. My rubies, Monsieur Poirot, the emerald necklace. I have spent my whole life gathering this collection. Will I not give to have them back? I implore you, no publicity. You understand, Monsieur Poirot, do you not? My own guests, my personal friends. It would be a monumental scandal. Who was the last to leave this room when you went into the studio? Mr. Johnston. Perhaps you know of him. He is a South African millionaire. He has just taken Abbotsbury House on Park Lane. He lingered in the study for a few moments, as I recall. But of course it could not have been him. And did any of your guests return to this room during the day under some pretext? I was prepared for your question, Monsieur Poirot. 3 of them returned. Princess Vera Rossakoff, Mr. Bernard Parker, and Lady Runcorn. Tell us about them. Princess Rossakoff is a perfectly charming Russian lady, a remnant of the old regime. She arrived in our country only recently. We had already said our goodbyes, and I was somewhat surprised to see her in this room, examining the collection of fans. You know, Monsieur Poirot, the more I think about it, the more suspicious her sudden interest in fans seems to me. What is your view? Highly suspicious. But tell me about the others. Well, Parker simply came back to get a small case containing a collection of miniatures that I was anxious to show to Lady Runcorn. And Lady Runcorn herself? I presume you know who Lady Runcorn is, a lady of quite venerable years, with a very strong character. She spends most of her time at meetings of charitable committees. She returned to the room for her handbag, which she had accidentally left behind. Bien, monsieur. So we have 4 suspects. A Russian princess, an English grande dame, a South African millionaire, and Mr. Bernard Parker. By the way, Who is he exactly, this Mr. Parker of yours? The question seemed to cause Mr. Hardman considerable embarrassment. He's a young man. Well, actually an acquaintance of mine. I had already gathered as much, Poirot remarked melancholily. But what does he do for a living, this Mr. Parker? He is just one of the local young men, without any definite occupation, if you will allow me to put it that way. And in what manner did he become your friend, may I ask? Well, once or twice. He performed certain commissions for me. Continue, monsieur, said Poirot. Hardman looked at him imploringly. It was quite evident that, more than anything in the world, he did not wish to continue. However, since Poirot maintained a steadfast silence, Hardman was forced to proceed. You see, Monsieur Poirot, it is well known that I am interested in antique jewelry. Occasionally, a necessity arises to sell family jewels, which, as you can imagine, is very undesirable to do on the open market or even through an antiquarian. However, it is quite a different matter to sell them to me privately. So, Parker informs me of such situations and discusses the details of the deals. He maintains contact with both parties, thereby removing a certain awkwardness. For instance, Princess Rossakoff brought family jewels with her from Russia. She is very much interested in selling them. Bernard Parker was to arrange that transaction. I see, Poirot said thoughtfully. And you trust him completely? I have never had cause for doubt. Mr. Hardman, whom do you yourself suspect out of the four? Oh, Monsieur Poirot, what a question. I told you, they're all my friends. I suspect none of them, or I suspect them all equally, whichever you prefer. I do not agree with you. One of these for you suspect much more. It is not Princess Rossakoff, nor is it Mr. Parker. It is either Lady Runcorn or Mr. Johnston. You have driven me into a corner, Monsieur Poirot. The most important thing for me is that there should be no scandal. Lady Runcorn belongs to one of the oldest English families. However, it is true, and it is a most regrettable truth, that her aunt, Lady Caroline, suffered from a certain specific infirmity. Naturally, all her friends treated it with understanding, and her maid always returned the teaspoons and other trifles. You understand what I mean? So Lady Runcorn had an aunt who suffered from kleptomania? Very interesting. Will you allow me to examine this safe? Having received Mr. Hardman's consent, Poirot opened the door of the safe. But only empty, velvet-lined shelves met our gaze. Even now, the door does not close as it should, Poirot murmured, attempting to shut it again. I wonder why that is. And what is this? I see a glove has been caught in the hinge. A man's glove. He held it out to Mr. Hardman. That is not my glove, the latter declared. And what else is here? Poirot bent down quickly and picked up a small object from the bottom shelf of the safe. It proved to be a black, highly polished cigarette case. That is my cigarette case, exclaimed Mr. Hardman. Yours? It cannot be, monsieur, for these are not your initials. He pointed to a monogram of 2 intertwined platinum letters. Hardman took it. You are right, he said. It is very similar to mine, but the initials are different. B and P. Good heavens! Parker! Bernard Parker! It would seem so, Poirot remarked. A rather absent-minded young man, especially if the glove is his as well. That would be a double clue, would it not? Bernard Parker, Hardman muttered. What a weight off my mind. Well, Monsieur Poirot, now I hope you will quickly recover the jewels. Or perhaps place the matter in the hands of the police if you think. That is, if you are quite certain it was him. Well then, my friend, Poirot said to me as we left the house together, it seems that for this Mr. Hardman, there is one law for the titled and another for the common folk. As for me, since I am not yet titled, I stand on the side of the common mortals. I rather like this young man. No, this incident definitely leaves a strange impression. Hardman suspects Lady Runcorn. I suspect the princess in Johnston, and yet the culprit turns out to be this small fry, Parker. And why did you suspect those two? Good heavens! It is so simple to be a Russian refugee or a South African millionaire. Any woman can pose as a Russian princess. Anyone can buy a house on Park Lane and call themselves a South African millionaire. Who would contradict them? However, I see we have reached Berry Street. Our absent-minded young friend seems to live here. So, let us, as you say, strike while the iron is hot. Mr. Bernard Parker was at home. We found him reclining on a sofa amidst cushions, clad in a stunning purple and orange dressing gown. Rarely have I felt a greater dislike for anyone than for this youth with his pale, petulant face and affected, lisping speech. "Good morning, monsieur." Poirot greeted him briskly. "I have come at the request of Mr. Hardman. Yesterday, during the reception, someone stole all his jewels. Permit me to ask you a question, monsieur. Is this your glove?" Mr. Parker's thought process appeared somewhat sluggish. He stared at the glove as if he didn't quite understand what he was being asked. "Where did you find it?" he finally uttered. "Is this your glove, monsieur?" Mr. Parker eventually managed to focus and replied, "No, it is not mine." "And the cigarette case, is it yours?" "Certainly not. I always carry my own, a silver one." "Well then, excellent, monsieur. In that case, I shall turn the matter over to the police." "Oh, look here, I wouldn't do that if I were you," Mr. Parker exclaimed in some confusion. "A devilishly ruthless lot, the police. Wait a moment. I'll go and see old Hardman." "Listen, wait just a minute." However, Poirot moved very resolutely toward the exit. "We have given him something to think about," he chuckled. "Tomorrow we shall see what comes of it." But fate saw fit to remind us of the Hardman case that very same day. A couple of hours later, the door to Poirot's sitting room suddenly flew open, and a lady in sable furs, for it was as cold as only an English July day can be, burst into the room like a whirlwind, wearing an unthinkable hat with an enormous egret plume. Princess Vera Rossakoff proved to be an extremely impulsive personality. "Are you Monsieur Poirot? What have you done? You have accused that poor boy. It is infamous. What a scandal. I know him. He is a mere chicken, a lamb. He could not steal. He has done so much for me. Can I sit calmly by while he is tormented and tortured? Tell me, madam, is this his cigarette case?" Poirot drew out the polished black case. For a moment, the princess fell silent, scrutinizing it. "Yes, it is his. I know it well." "And what of it? You found in the room?" "We were all there. That is when he must have left it." "Bah! You policemen, you are worse than the Red Guard." "And is this his glove?" "How should I know? All gloves are the same. Do not try to convince me. He must be released at once. His reputation must be restored, and you are the one who must do it. I will sell my jewels and pay you well." "Madam, then you agree?" "No, no, do not argue. The poor boy, he came to me. He was almost in tears. 'I will save you,' I told him. 'I will go to this man, this ogre, this monster. Leave everything to Vera. Thank God it is settled. I am going.' As unceremoniously as she had appeared, she swept out of the room, leaving behind the heavy, all-pervading scent of exotic perfume. "What a woman!" I exclaimed. "And what furs! Oh yes, they were quite genuine. And can an exiled princess afford genuine furs? I am merely jesting. Hastings? No, I believe she's indeed Russian. Well, It seems Monsieur Bernard went to her to have a good cry. The cigarette case is his, and the glove too. With a smile, Poirot extracted a second glove from his pocket and laid it beside the first. There could be no doubt that they were a pair. Poirot, where did you get the second one? It was tossed on a table along with a cane in the hallway of the flat on Berry Street. A very absent-minded young man indeed, this Monsieur Parker. Now, mon ami, we must be very observant. And now, merely as a matter of form, I shall pay a small visit to Park Lane. Needless to say, I accompanied my friend. We did not find Mr. Johnston in, but we met with his private secretary. It turned out that Johnston had only recently arrived from South Africa and had never been to England before. He is interested in precious stones, is he not? Poirot asked. More in gold mining. The secretary laughed. After this conversation, Poirot emerged deep in thought. And that same evening, to my utter surprise, I found him studying the Russian alphabet. Heavenly powers! I cried. Poirot, are you truly learning Russian just to chat with the princess in her native tongue? She certainly has no desire to listen to my English. But surely all Russian nobles speak French. You are a positive mine of information, Hastings. Therefore, I shall cease wandering through the wilderness of the Russian alphabet. And with a theatrical gesture, he flung the book aside. However, I felt he was keeping something back. In his eyes shone those familiar green sparks. They were an unfailing sign that Poirot was pleased with himself. Perhaps, I said insightfully, you doubt she is a real Russian, and you wish to test her. Oh no, she is Russian. Then why? If you truly wish to distinguish yourself in this case, Hastings, I recommend First Steps in Russian as an invaluable aid. He laughed and would say no more. I picked the textbook up from the floor and began to study it, but I could not for the life of me understand what Poirot meant. The following morning brought no news, but this did not seem to worry my friend in the least. During breakfast, he announced his intention to see Mr. Hardman that afternoon. We found the aging social butterfly at home, far more composed than the day before. Well, Monsieur Poirot, what news? He inquired nonetheless with impatience. Poirot handed him a slip of paper. Here is the person who took the jewels, monsieur. Shall I place the matter in the hands of the police? Or perhaps you prefer to have them returned without involving the authorities? Mr. Hardman stared at the paper with a stunned expression. Finally, his voice returned. Incredible. I would wish for no scandal in connection with this matter. I give you carte blanche, Monsieur Poirot, and rely entirely upon your discretion. We then took a taxi, and Poirot directed the driver to the Carlton Hotel. There we inquired after Princess Rossakoff, and within minutes were shown up to her suite. She appeared, holding out her hands to us, wearing a charming negligee of a somewhat barbaric cut. Monsieur Poirot, she cried, have you succeeded in clearing that child? Princess, your friend Mr. Parker is in no danger of arrest. Ah, how clever of you. Excellent. And so quickly. On the other hand, I have promised Mr. Hardman that the jewel shall be returned to him this very day. And then, I mean to say, madam, that I should be most grateful if you would be so kind as to hand them to me. I deeply regret having to hurry you, but a taxi is waiting for me below in the event that I must drive to Scotland Yard, and we Belgians are an economical people, madam. The princess lit a cigarette. For a few seconds she sat perfectly still, merely blowing smoke rings and staring fixedly at Poirot. Then she suddenly burst into laughter and stood up. She went to a bureau, opened a drawer, took out a black silk bag, and handed it to Poirot with a smile. When she spoke, her voice was light and calm. And we Russians, on the contrary, are spendthrifts. And to be such, unfortunately, requires money. You need not look inside. They are all there. Poirot rose. I must express my admiration, madam. You are clever, and your presence of mind is superb. And what else is there for me to do if a taxi is waiting for you below? You are very kind, madam. Will you be staying in London much longer? I fear not very, thanks to you. Pray accept my apologies. Perhaps we shall meet again some day. I should be charmed, but I should not. The princess exclaimed with a laugh. Understand this. It is a great compliment on my part. There are very few men in this world whom I fear. Farewell, Monsieur Poirot. Farewell, Princess. Oh, forgive me, I quite forgot. Your cigarette case. And with a bow, he handed her the small, black, highly polished case found in the safe. She accepted it with a perfectly composed air, merely raising an eyebrow slightly and whispering, I see. What a woman! Poirot exclaimed admiringly as we descended the stairs. Not a word of protest, no arguments, no tears or complaints. She assessed the situation quickly and correctly. A woman who accepts defeat like that, with a carefree smile, is an extraordinary woman, I tell you, Hastings. She is very dangerous. She has nerves of steel. Here he stumbled. I suggest you moderate your enthusiasms and look where you are going, I remarked acidly. When did you first suspect the princess? Mon ami, I was alerted by the fact that there was both a glove and a cigarette case, a double clue, so to speak. Bernard Parker might have dropped one or the other, but hardly both at once. No, that would be too much even for a very absent-minded man. Likewise, if someone had planted those items to cast suspicion on Parker, in that case, too, it would have been overkill. One item would have been quite enough. Therefore, I was forced to conclude that one of those two things did not belong to Parker. At first, I thought the cigarette case was his and the glove was not. But then I discovered the mate to that glove in his hallway and realized that was not it. Whose, then, was the cigarette case? It was quite obvious it could not belong to Lady Runcorn. The initials were not hers. Mr. Johnston? But only if you were hiding under a false name. I spoke with his secretary and realized everything was in order there. Mr. Johnston's past invited no suspicion. That leaves the princess. It was well known that she brought jewels from Russia. It would be simple for her to remove the stones from their settings, making them practically impossible to identify. And how easy it was for her to take one of Parker's gloves from the hall and plant it in the safe. But she made a blunder with her own cigarette case. Evidently, while she was planting the glove in the safe, she left her own case there in her haste. But if the cigarette case is hers, why does it have the letters B and P on it? Surely the princess's initials are V and R? Poirot smiled indulgently. Exactly, V and R. It is just that in the Russian alphabet, the character that looks like B is V, and the character that looks like P is R. I see. I should never have thought of that in 1,000 years. It's too much. The whole thing is terribly convoluted. So should I have been, Hastings, which is why I bought that little book and drew your attention to it. He smiled. A remarkable woman. I have a premonition, my friend, that I shall meet her again. I only wonder where